Our guest speaker for today, Mr. Wei Yo, is a Trinitarian from the class of 1999 and a former vice captain of Archer House. Mr. Yo made his way through the school along with a couple of brothers, and I understand that you can find his name on the board on that side of the hall in the top 1% of the state. Since graduating from our school in '99, Mr. Yo has been very busy. He has a degree in physiotherapy and a master's degree in development studies. And he lived in Cambodia for 5 years, and in that context founded an organisation called OIC Cambodia, whose mission was to bring speech therapy to the 600,000 Cambodians who need speech therapy without one in the country. Those of you who came through the prep or the junior schools may be familiar with one of the activities of OIC Cambodia, which is the Day Without Speech. That activity and the work of OIC has sprung from the leadership that this man has shown. He's also the co-founder of an organisation called UMBO, which is a social enterprise which looks to connect children in rural areas who do not have access to the kind of allied health professionals that we have such easy access to, and seeks to do so through an online platform which integrates video and data and provides a way to connect the resources of the city with that of urban areas, with rural areas, with a view perchance to being able to do so internationally, such that a speech pathologist in Cabramatta would be able to serve the needs of a community in Vietnam. Our school seeks to shape young men who will make a contribution to society, and that their leadership will be done for good, as service, to help other people. Mr. Wei Yo is such a man, and it's our very great honour and privilege to have him here today to speak to our school officers, to our school community. Will you please make Mr. Wei Yo very welcome.
That's quite an intro. It is true my name is up on that board, but I will also point out that my elder two brothers' names are up on that board, and I believe my eldest brother, somewhere in the early 90s, is on the Ducks board. Now, my eldest brother, just briefly, when he finished school, and no pressure, guys, managed to get the equivalent of an ATAR of 100. So as the younger brother of a boy who managed to get 100 ATAR, and then went on to become an orthopaedic surgeon, life was actually pretty great. Because in an Asian family, you can't really beat that. So when it comes to the third, my parents are like, well, he can do whatever he likes. And that's how I ended up in Cambodia. So I want to start by saying what an honour it is to be invited to come back to talk, and I really want to thank Headmaster Bowden for the opportunity today. And for the school officers who are being inducted, congratulations firstly, and I hope you're able to do a better job than I was able to do in your position. Because relatively close to 10 years ago, and by relatively close I mean 19 years, I was in your shoes. In 1999, after being inducted as one of the school's prefects, I was doing my duty at a first 15 game, and we were standing up in front of the school, leading the school chants. And I remember it was a lot of fun, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. After the game, I noticed a fair amount of rubbish in one section of the stands, and I told one of the younger boys in the area to go and clean it up. And he said to me, well, I didn't drop it, why should I? And I naively said the first thing that came to mind, which was, well, because I'm a prefect and I told you so. Good move, Wei, well done. Now, I won't repeat exactly what he said back to me because it wasn't particularly polite. But despite this, I can't fault his logic. Actually, he had taught me something at a young age about leadership. I had expected to lead someone because I had a badge on my chest, and not because I'd shown him that I was worthy of leadership. So I'm not saying that the next time someone in a position of authority tells you to do something, you should tell them impolitely to go away. What I am saying is it makes it so much easier for people to follow you if you show them that you're worthy of the privilege of leadership. Now, today we're here to celebrate the induction of new leaders, and I've been invited to speak to you because I assume I've had some experience of being a leader myself in a number of different contexts. And so the logical thing to do would be to tell you that I've learned all of these things since leaving Trinity, and the experiences that I've had which have shaped my view of leadership, and how many wonderful lessons you have to look forward to. And that could be an interesting talk, but it's not the talk that I'm going to give to you today. Because when most people talk about leadership to young people, they put adult leaders up on some kind of pedestal, as if young people need to learn from older people what leadership is really all about. And if that was the case, why is it that we struggle to find any leaders in the political landscape or the entertainment industry or the private sector that are actually worth admiring? I mean, how many leaders would you say are currently inspiring you to become a leader, let alone follow them? So the reality is, in my opinion, that you don't need to learn about leadership once you leave school. You, as a young person, you already have all the leadership qualities that you need. You just need to retain them. Because the world as it's set up, regardless of whether it's in politics, private sector, or non-profit, which is most of my background, this world will try and strip you of those inherent leadership qualities. And your job is not addition, it's retention. It's retaining what you already know. So, in no particular order, here are 4 inherent leadership qualities that I think young people have and that many adults could afford to attain. The first one is stay curious. Now, I want you to think intuitively about whether leadership is about telling people what to do or about asking questions. Our concept of leadership has always been one of a leader giving out orders. You're sitting on top of a horse, leading your troops out to battle. Or you're an NFL coach or a Wallabies coach, screaming at his players, struggling to keep your job. But that suggests that a leader has all the answers. And the reality is the leader is the one who is the most comfortable with not knowing the answers. And a child inherently knows this, particularly younger children. I'll give you an example of a conversation with my nephew, which is not far from the truth. Hey Sam, you can't go out to play today. Why? Because you'll get wet. Why? Because it's raining. Why? Because too much water has condensed around a particle, or the air temperature above us has dropped. Why? Because of the hydrologic cycle that ensures that water changes state from position over time. Geez, Wikipedia is very helpful. You get the idea. As silly as repetitively asking simple questions like why seems, this is the basis of what Toyota implemented in the 1950s to standardise production and troubleshoot issues. The process is very simple. You just ask why 5 times, and you will get to the root cause of a problem. And as the leader, your job is to find the truth by asking why. So the next time your parents tell you that you can't go to that party on Saturday night, just tell them you're exercising your leadership potential by continually asking why for 24 hours. Now, number 2, stay humble. A child, particularly because they haven't necessarily done and achieved a lot in the world, is inherently humble, and that's the nature of childhood. You might have people around you who are telling you how gifted you are, how intelligent you are, and how you can achieve anything that you want to in your life. And that's nice to hear, but I don't think it really helps you in the long term. Why? I'm exercising my leadership potential. Because if you already have all these gifts, what would be the point of hard work, dedication, and persistence? And what would be the point of even asking questions? In 2012, I founded a charity in Cambodia which is currently addressing one of the biggest healthcare gaps in that country. It's been a wild ride, full of ups and downs, with a fair amount of accolades along the way. Earlier this year, I was named amongst the 15 people as one of the top emerging leaders in Australia and the ASEAN region by the Australian government. But that accolade is not my proudest moment. My proudest moment so far in my career has been being challenged in a meeting by a young Cambodian female staff member because she didn't agree with what I had said. And it's worth just pausing for a moment to think about culturally how unusual that is. She openly challenged her foreign male boss, who happened to be older than her and the founder. And what this told me, and why it made me proud, was that we had created an environment where it wasn't one person doing the thinking for everyone else. It was everyone thinking for themselves. And as the leader, I just had to be smart enough to listen. Number 3, don't forget your privilege. When you come into the world as a baby, you see things for the first time. And you can probably remember seeing a young baby exploring something very run-of-the-mill, like a spoon or a book, and just being fascinated by it. And then as we get older, we become more accustomed to these mundane things in our life. A few months ago, I was cycling down the road when I saw a Chinese man who was probably a tourist taking photos of the trees, the sun, the sky, and birds chirping. Now, in the past, before I lived overseas, I might have looked at that man and thought, wow, what a weirdo. As if you take photos of something so run-of-the-mill. But these days, my perspective has changed. I've lived in China, Cambodia, Vietnam, and India for 8 years, and I've realised that some of the simple things we take for granted are not the norm for the majority of people in the world. So how many times have you thought consciously about what it takes to be able to turn on a tap and drink a glass of water? Outside of Oceania and North America, this is not the norm at all. There are no countries in Africa, none in South America, and only 6 in Asia where you can get away with doing this. And that means more than half the world is not as lucky as us when it comes to something simple as tap water. So wouldn't it be better if we were all just a little bit like that Chinese man? If every time we did something, we were looking at it as if we were a newborn. Every time you turn on the tap to drink water, wouldn't it be better to remember that half the world doesn't have that privilege? Number 4, do what you think is right, not what others think is right. With the important exception of climate change, there is no doubt that the world on balance is a far better place than it was even when I was in school. And here's one simple statistic that demonstrates that. The number of people living in extreme poverty has decreased by 137,000 every day between 1990 and 2015. That's every day. And that means that since the time I've started talking, about 900 people have escaped extreme poverty, the lowest rung on the wealth scale. And despite this, there are many problems in the world that are yet to be solved. We need passionate, hardworking, empathetic leaders. And we need leaders who are willing to think differently. And from working with uni students and young people, I'm confident that we're better placed than ever to do this. A recent study of over 30,000 people indicated that 75% of millennials and Gen Z will pay more for products and services as long as they give back to society. And this is one of many studies that suggest that this younger generation is the most purpose-led generation and the most connected generation to morals ever. And that's why, as I said at the beginning of my talk, that if we want to look for moral leadership, statistically, the data says we should be more willing to turn to a millennial or a Gen Z than a baby boomer. So to sum up, what is leadership all about? For me, leadership is all about making choices that are aligned to your values. And at this age, before you are tempted by fleeting things such as fame, corruption, power, and the possibility of being on The Bachelorette, you implicitly know what is right, and you know what good values are. You just need to make sure you're acting on them. But if you take just one thought from today, I'd like it to be this. There is a difference between compliant leadership and non-compliant leadership. Compliant leadership is what we need when times are stable and things are constant, or it's what leaders create when they want you to be stable and constant. Think about an authoritarian regime, for example. Non-compliant leadership is what we need in 2018 and beyond. We don't have a clue what the world will look like tomorrow, let alone in the next couple of years. So we need leaders who are asking the very simple question, why? And challenging the status quo. And I'm hoping that the school officers of today, and all of you as well, can be these kind of leaders. Because take it from a guy who used to be here about 10 years ago, we need you to be. Thank you.
Having become familiar with Wayo's story over the last year, I can think of no better person to speak to you and perhaps to fire your imagination about what your leadership might look like in the approximately 10 years that lie ahead before you are his age.